Hello and welcome to Dungeoneered, a podcast dedicated to discussing Dungeons and Dragons. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Josh.
Let's do this. All right, Josh. So, what is our topic for this week? You were telling me that you were wrapping it up in a beautiful present to give to me for Christmas.
Okay.
With a nice bow.
I kind of went.
A beautiful bow.
I went for a city today, and so before I tell you what city I went with, I had a question for you.
Ooh, are we doing a guessing game? Because I did so good last time.
No, we're not doing a guessing game. We're just doing a kind of a knowledge test.
All right, I'm ready. I'm super smart.
How many Forgotten Realms cities do you know, or just D&D cities? Like, what name some that just come to mind?
Scholt.
Yes, that works. I think.
Oh yes. Okay, that's one. Yeah, that's it. That's all I got.
Well,
we've talked about some too, and I don't.
We have talked about a lot. You could have got Thultenthar. You could have got Baldur's Gate. You could have got Waterdeep. You could have got
right.
I'm trying to think of ones that you might know.
Here. Let's go back. Let's go back. We'll cut that out.
No.
There's Baldur's Gate for sure.
Oh, really? I didn't know you would know that one.
Yeah. I can't remember the other ones you said. Dang it.
Well, you tried, and that's all we could really hope for. The one we're talking about this week.
Maximum effort.
So, because last week we discussed the Yawning Portal, I decided that this week would be a good time to do an episode on the kind of city that resides in, which is Waterdeep. Now, Waterdeep is on a place...
Wait, quick question before you continue.
Quick answer.
What do ears smell like?
I'm cutting this out. This won't make sense to anybody listening to the episode.
That's all I wanted.
You can't just say that.
That's all I wanted. And I knew you were going to have to cut it out.
I'm keeping it in, I think. I'm actually going to keep it in.
No,
keep in this professional outfit.
And my bird just screamed.
So, to all the listeners, because I am going to keep this in, beforehand, he was kind of doing this weird sniffing into the mic, and I was very confused, but I was very off-put, and I kind of explained how I do the recording, where I have his voice going to the right of the stereo recording, and mine going to the left, and so it sounds like he's sniffing in my right ear, and that was what he was relating it to.
No, you're going to make me sound creepy.
He is creepy. He really is.
Oh, I'm not. Dang it.
I mean, you're cultivating your brand right now. Creepy is now going to be a part of that.
No, I think, my brand is more spontaneous, I think.
Sure. Let's go with that. Spontaneous weirdness and creepiness. Now, Waterdeep is on a place called the Sword Coast, and it is known as the City of Splendor and Crown of the North. It is one of the richest and most influential cities in the North. Some say in all of Faerun. Now, the routes to Waterdeep are paved and well patrolled all the way to like 30 to 40 miles away from its walls. It is an incredibly rich city because of its centralized position between the mineral-rich lands to the north, the merchant kingdoms of Amun and Kalimshan to the south, and the kingdoms of the Inner Sea to the east, and the sea kingdoms and traders to the west. It started as a simple trading town, connecting the north and the south, and sailors began calling it Waterdeep, even though it had another name at the time. Slowly, more and more farms were built until its population reached the point where it fully became what we know of today as the city of Waterdeep.
You know what was really good about that sentence that you just said?
You're going to point it out, and I was going to cut it out.
No, you said farmers were built.
No.
Until the population increased. Either one worked really well, to be honest.
They just built farmers. It's like
built farmers.
It's like Age of Empires. You just got to build more farmers, and then you have more food.
Queue him up in the town center.
Uh, but yes, I was gonna cut that out, but I guess I can't now. Now
Listen, I wanted you to cut out ear smelling, and that isn't going to be the
you're
case.
the one who
I'm not
said
letting
it
you get away with
though.
this.
I said mine on accident. Now, when they became this city of Waterdeep, they kind of raised up these people as the lords of Waterdeep. So they were ruled by a council. In the next 200 years, the city's cemetery grew into a major park, an important part of the city called the City of the Dead. And many of the guilds
That's so creepy.
yeah, a little bit, but it's not just like a gross cemetery. Like it's a park. It's like it's beautified. It looks really nice, but they just decided to call it the creepy name City of the Dead. And
I feel like that makes it worse, though.
many of the guilds were established around this time. Now these guilds rose up and ousted the Lords of Waterdeep, taking over and establishing their own group called the Council of Guildmasters. The guilds took over by finding out who many of these masked lords were and secretly having them assassinated. Many people had no idea that there was even this power vacuum, but the guilds did, and they struck, and they took over relatively easily. But that's where the problems begin. The problems arose, which is now called the Guild Wars, where each guild tried to kill each other to gain sole control of the city. After 2 months of horrible deaths and turmoil, finally a deal was struck and the guild war was halted. Sadly, though, this was only a facade, and in the background they continued to fight more secretively than before for the next 6 years, until only 2 guild masters remained, and finally a real truce was established. They decided to rule and reinstated the masked lord system to Waterdeep, with those 2 being among the lords. This is now the system that they still have to this day. When the war was over, the city began to grow and prosper again. Many different people came to Waterdeep to make their fortune, establishing Waterdeep as a truly tolerant, accepting melting pot of all different races, religions, and lifestyles. 100 years later, though, the city was struck with a devastating plague called putrescent anathema, which significantly lowered its population. This plague decimated their food as well as severely raising the price for Waterdeepians. Sadly, I couldn't find much more about this plague despite trying to really flesh it out.
Yeah, it actually sounds super interesting.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that'd be really cool to talk about, but it was like everything said the same. Like it decimated the food stores. The poor population was just hit horribly with it because they couldn't pay for food anymore, and like there was just a lot of things, a lot of badness came from it, but they wouldn't go into any more detail than that. Now, we've kind of talked about this already, but I thought I'd just lay out the governmental system of Waterdeep just to be clear. Waterdeep is ruled by a council, keeping their identities secret, but ruling openly. They wear masks called helms while they rule in public. Now, there's one...
So helmets.
There's one member who is known to all called the Open Lord of Waterdeep. So requests can be made of them, and it is easier to contact them if they need to be. Currently, it is Lord Pierre Garon. Many nobles try to find the identities of these lords, but few are actually successful. These were made more... The identities are made more confusing through false rumors being spread throughout the courts as well. Now, magisters act as judges, but for any case of extreme importance or on specific request, a jury of the lords can be brought. But there are dangerous repercussions if the case is deemed to be trivial and below their importance. Organized crime in Waterdeep is either on such a small scale or is squashed entirely by the lords. The last Thieves Guild was squashed nearly 200 years ago. Now, one beholder tried to rise to power named Xanathar. His crime network and himself were defeated by bold adventurers at the behest of the Open Lord Paragon. I'm never going to be able to pronounce that correct. Pierre Guerin. I hope that's correct. Now, how is Waterdeep defended? Being such a rich trade hub makes it a target to a lot of dangerous people. They have two armed forces, the city guards, which were the soldiers watching the walls and roads and any sort of bodyguards needed, like they guard their bodyguards for the magisters. The second force is the city watch, which was like the local police force. But neither of those were their main defense. The main defense, and this is like incredibly cool and the greatest thing about Waterdeep, were their 8 giant animated statues throughout the city. They only move when they are needed, but their sight alone is a major deterrent to anyone committing crimes.
All right, we have to stop and talk about that. They have 8 giant statues that defend the city?
Yes, they're 8 giant statues that just stand on plinths until they are needed. Now,
I mean, do they just control them with magic or like
no,
what?
No. Unlike most constructs, these statues are sentient, free thinking and reasoning.
What the
heck?
Yes,
They can stand perfectly still for centuries, watching vigilantly, deep in thought. These statues are CR18, so they can easily protect the city from nearly all threats.
I just picture them standing, waiting for death, like waiting for like an invasion, and they're just pondering what is the meaning of life.
They can literally, yes, they do that. They just think about things while just staying vigilant. It's incredible, and they're so powerful, and you could just see them throughout all of this city because they're giant. It's so cool.
I don't know. If I lived in the city, that'd be so unnerving, though.
They're not. Well, that's the thing. They like Xanathar did all his crime. They don't send him after that. They send him after like Vecna attacking the world or dragons attacking the city. Like petty crime is not their forte. That's what they have the city guard for. And the city
what
watch.
What happens when, those 8 giant statues turn into an Attack on Titan scenario, where all of a sudden they're like, I want to eat man flesh, and they just, kill everybody?
Well, they were originally...
Don't tell me that happens.
They were originally kept on the ethereal plane, but then during the spell plague, when magic kind of went mad, they were brought onto the plane suddenly, and they just attacked the city. And there was like nothing people could do about it. So they just kind of like stopped them and saved as many people as they could. And once they finally grew tired of destroying the city, they just rebuilt.
Yeah, what are you supposed to do against 8 CR?
And then they gained control of them again and put them up as they are, as statues.
Yeah, I mean, I'd wake up every morning, walk out my front door and be like, is he killing me today?
I think if you lived there long enough, it would just be like, that's cool. It would just become like a cool thing instead of like I am going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. They're going to kill me. Like, it's not going to be a fear thing for that long.
That's how they get you, though. That's how they get you.
They're just lulling you into a false sense of security. You're going to be on the streets in Waterdeep. Beware! Beware! The statues will attack us one day.
Yeah, the day you wake up and you're not afraid of them is the day they eat you.
The day they attack. Well, that's what I have about Waterdeep this week. And so I thought for our topic, we could talk about cities, like making a city.
Okay. No, absolutely. But before we make a city, I have another question.
I have another
answer.
And
you may have explained this, and I just don't remember. But why is the city called Waterdeep? Is it like deep in water?
It's just it's a really deep harbor. It's set on the Sword Coast, so it's literally set. It's a port city, and its harbor is super deep. And so
when I think of Waterdeep, I think of like your entire city is like a marsh, and you're like walking in ankle deep water all the time.
No, that's not what they did. They built it up in this harbor. It has a beautiful like island there, so it's a beautiful I forget what they call those, but one of those things to kind of prevent the any sort of like large water catastrophe, it crashes against this reef first before hitting into the city. But their kind of area there where their docks are is just like a deep, deep water harbor. And so it was just kind of a nickname given to it by different fishermen and seamen. And they decided, yeah, we like the name. And I guess they just kept it eventually. Because it went through a few different people's like control. Like a few different people, like it was elves at one point, then it was other groups, and they just kind of got sacked or different things happened. And then eventually it became a human-ish settlement. And then farms grew, and then a bunch of different people came, and it just grew and grew and grew. And the one name that stuck around through all those different versions was Waterdeep, because that's what the sailors and traders would call it.
Yeah, I just pictured it so different when I,
yeah,
before I was educated on the subject.
Well, so let's make a city now. Is that good with you?
Yeah, totally. It's just a gigantuan topic.
So how would you like to boil it down?
That is an excellent question. How do we want to boil it down? Actually, before we even do that, I have another question for you.
Okay.
What is a favorite city you've made in your world?
I'm not sure. Huh. Like I have a lot of cities that I think are interesting and that I kind of added unique things to and I like, but I don't think any that have been like, I love that or that was amazing. Like I have one that's like a kind of like a weird Vegas-y kind of feel. There's a lot of casinos and kind of like glowing magic lights and stuff. And then I have one that's a mixture of like, there's a lot of like, I have the Gith in my world kind of be like Asian inspired. So they have a lot of pagodas and like their type of architecture. And so they've been so involved in this city that there's a huge section of it that's this kind of Asian architecture. And it's cool. It's a mixture of like kind of this very utilitarian brutalism on one side and then this area where it's this beautiful Asian architecture. And so, like, there's a lot of cool cities, but I don't know if there's any that I'd be like, that's the one that I adore. Do you have one?
I guess I'm kind of in a similar boat. Maybe a little less. I don't know. I like all the cities that I've made, to be honest.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
I think though, like, with this topic of making a huge city, there's so much to like think about because like you have to think of cultural significances. You have to think about
so that's why I think we just go as far as we can. So in the hour this episode is just go as far as we can. So we start on like where do we want it to be? Do you want it to be coastal? Do you want it to be on a river? Do you want it to be in snow in a desert? And then we just go and build on it until we're satisfied or until the episode's over, whichever comes first. Because we're just supposed to be getting ideas for people, we don't need to finish. We don't need to create a whole thing by the end. I don't think any of the things we made have been finished either. Like we'll create liches and then won't name them. Or like there's major parts that we
even though we said we were going to name them. Right.
Yep. Major things that are like, hey, it's kind of important to the creation, but so we just don't. So what do you think?
I don't know. Do we want to do like a big city, small city, a town, what do we want to do? Like, how do we want this to work?
Well, I'll say a big city, because then if we do a big city, we won't finish everything about the city. And if someone wants to use like all of the ideas, which I doubt they will, like all of the ideas, but if they want to, like there's still so much work they need to do to complete it that they could use it exactly as we've said it and keep building.
Okay, so what is your favorite aspect when you're a player of a city?
Architecture. It's hard for a DM to explain that and like make that interesting, but I just love architecture. And so just seeing like, and it's also hard for someone to think about just like why, like a place, why the city is built where it is and how that affected their architecture, how their things are designed in such a way like the Vikings and how they have these really rounded kind of roofs. because they needed to throw off all this snow and all this, and it was because of the environment they lived in that their buildings were made in a specific way.
That does kind of remind me a little bit of one of the cities that I made in my game, talking about like favorite cities. When you started like saying like architecture and then like how they build their buildings and stuff based on where they lived, it reminds me of like the city that I made called Ravens Ridge. Did I ever told you about Ravens Ridge?
I think so. I think that was where my character was set when we were going. It was to the far north, correct?
Yeah, it is. It's like it's a huge city carved out of a cliff. Like if you were to take like a ice cream scoop and like scoop out of a cliff and leave like a hole into the cliff, you have a city like inside that hole.
Yeah.
Because how they built it was it started as just a mine, and they ended up making this huge open cavern and chasm, and all the miners slowly began to build and create like homes out of the rock and stone that they had used from the cliff.
Yeah.
To create a whole society, and then it turned into a huge flourishing city.
Interesting.
Yeah. And they ended up using all the tunnels and mining to make to like create a fun sport called sky sailing. And it's essentially like it's like wakeboarding but in the sky. And they fly through all the different tunnels and stuff and do races.
Interesting.
And yes, I have mechanics for it in my game because my players could have done it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well,
all right, so big city.
Yes.
When I think of big cities, I think of three things. First, big cities are most likely to be like with a harbor, at least in
ports. Yeah.
Old, like, if we're going like medieval style type thing. Harbor on a river, or sometimes they can get away with like an oasis of some kind, but there has to be like something.
Could it be like a?
Where trade can flow
I kind of want it to be like a sea. Okay, that's going to be really fun to edit. That ice.
That was so loud.
Very loud. But
guess what that was?
It was
guess
ice in a drink glass. In the glass.
Yeah, but it's just sitting on my desk. I haven't even touched it.
It just melted in such a way that it would.
Yeah, I
thought you were drinking from it.
Nope.
Well, such is bad timing. So what I kind of want it to be is like the Mediterranean Sea, so it's not. I mean, it's not into the ocean, but technically you could get to the ocean from there. Doesn't the Mediterranean Sea have an exit to the ocean? I think it does. But
yes.
But so all of that whole sea all around it, all of those cultures were just they all traded with each other, and so it kind of everybody on that's where the greatness of the huge sea is that they could just cross it to go to Italy or all these different places. And so there was just this huge amount of different,
a million different cities on the Mediterranean Sea that are all
and
huge.
they're all like their own like huge, like hugely different cultures. And so they all had different amenities to give to each other or to trade with each other. And so it just created this super rich area because they were all so involved in this trade.
Have you ever, this kind of reminds me, have you ever made a city that like floats on the water in a D&D campaign?
I have not. I thought about it. And like, if you look at, I have a huge wall that I've covered in paper that I've been drawing a world map on. And one of the cities for the current continent that my players are on, it was drawn on that map floating. But then in the real one, I just kind of made it not.
I think that'd be kind of fun. Like this city on like a Mediterranean Sea type thing.
Kind of like a central hub floating kind of area? Or could it be like a mining for oil type thing? Like they found some sort of thing under the water that they're like, we got to build something above this so we could just do it here.
Okay. Hear me out.
Okay.
This is going to be a little crazy. What if in this city underwater there's like these massive crystal caverns, and so they built half the city above them, and they dive underneath to get these beautiful gems that are formed in the middle of the sea.
Okay, interesting. What do you think it is about this sea? I have a really crazy idea, but it would be really hard to like. So I was thinking like there's some sort of vortex or like constant kind of spinning of this sea. And so because of this, there's kind of this massive amount of pressure in the middle. And so that's where what's kind of forming these crystals, is because there's this massive amount of pressure. And so they have to go
I like where this is
dive
going.
into that. And so maybe it's not even in the middle, maybe it's to the side, but they like dive down into it.
What I'm thinking is this. Very similar lines is because our little sea is connected to the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say the currents in this sea are very strong and they end up forming this strong current that kind of brings and gathers all of these minerals that have like floated out into the ocean, out all, throughout the sea, and they coalesce into this small cove that the minerals then get deposited and left. And after a huge amount of time, all of these minerals have kind of coalesced.
Okay, I had an idea for this that I thought was crazy, but now that you're going on this, I kind of wanted this. I think this should be it. It's not just getting like loose minerals or whatnot. Like maybe this sea was like the home to a dragon turtle. And so they don't know, but they're actually diving into this dead dragon turtle's hoard. And so what it like you said, the current kind of pulled it all into this different area, but it all was once this dead dragon turtle's hoard.
See, I like this too, but I think they should be separate.
So maybe some of it is coming from that hoard, but not all of it.
Yeah. So, for example, if you were to have the party explore this, they could easily like dive into these caverns and stuff. All sorts of cool tropical wildlife, like fish life, wildlife, fish life. Anyways,
yeah, but fish. We all know, fish are not wild, so they are not wildlife. Fish are very calm, relaxed.
Listen here, okay?
There's wildlife, and then there's calm life. You get what I mean. Fish are definitely calm life.
When was the last time I made fun of you saying stuff?
Just a few minutes ago, I think, when you were like, hey, I got to point out that you said build farmers.
What? I don't remember that.
You would never say that. Yeah.
That must have been somebody else. Anyways, aquatic life.
Yeah.
But they could explore down through these caverns, but they also end up finding like loose pieces of gold, like rubies, sapphires that are like carved, not just growing out of the stone. And they can eventually find like, would be really cool, like even if it wasn't a dragon turtle, just like an old ancient corpse of
just some leviathan of some sort. Yeah. Some underwater.
Where my mind originally went, and this is partially copyright, but my mind originally went to, have you seen the new Netflix show about
no,
the Greek pantheon?
Yeah, I haven't watched a Netflix show in a while, so I immediately knew my answer was going to be a no to that.
Yeah, well, anyways, essentially,
what's it called?
The Greek gods killed these huge giants, and they died in the ocean, and their bodies still remain. And if a person touches it, they like become corrupted by the evil power that is the giant, and they like gain some of its power.
Is this an animated show? What is this?
Yeah, it's an animated show. It's super good. Highly recommend it. It's Life of can't remember the name, but
it's Life of something really though.
I enjoyed it. Not for sure. Don't quote me on that either. Listen, I can't even remember a city 3 seconds into when you just said it.
Okay.
It's like Born of Zeus or like something like that.
Blood of Zeus?
Yes. That is it.
Okay, interesting. I will definitely have to put this on my watch list.
Yeah, so that kind of like, it'd be really fun if they like dive down and they find like an old corpse of a dragon, like a normal dragon, this huge skeletal figure that's like covered in treasure and stuff. That'd be kind of fun to like throw down there. But I like the idea of this like half normal like on land city, and then half of it's like floating and sprawling out. So like you start on top of this hill and you look down over this bay and you can just see the city just goes straight onto the water and just like continues to sprawl out. And there's these like huge holes in like the boardwalks that go straight into these huge underwater caverns, and people like dive off into them and stuff. And there's like various different, almost like explorers guilds that like hire people to like dive into these huge chasms in these huge tunnels to like look for treasure, to get minerals, stuff like that. So it's like a whole huge attraction. I think that'd be really fun.
Interesting.
And I think it would also be fun to like, you have to figure out a reason for this, but some of them are like really hot, so like it would kind of prevent the the players from just diving in at level 1 and like getting rich because they would like burn.
So what I was thinking, some like a reason for these currents and these things down there, which you could use to kind of make some hot, some cold, some like they just be different things that you can't, is that they all have like maybe hidden deep within some of these like tunnels, there are like maybe not even full size, but just like a pin size hole of some sort of small portal to elemental planes. So the elemental plane of water just creates this vortex. A small pinhole to the elemental plane of fire creates a very hot tunnel. Cold creates a cold tunnel, and so on and so on. And so they all have to, like, they all have different attributes to them based on the portal at the end of them.
And I like this, where this goes. It also ties into like when we made those like portal nights or whatever.
Yeah, maybe you get down there and at the end of it, protecting them are like portal knights, but they're like Sahuagin or some sort of one of the Kuatoa, some sort of fish people that have taken this mantle. And maybe that would be maybe. No, and I also maybe you use that as like the history that these portal knights existed, and maybe these guys don't even fully understand what they're doing, but they have like ancient armor of these portal knights because like they died down here, the portal knights, and so they have like old suits of armor and old suits of this, like, and so they've taken up this mantle.
That'd be really fun.
Yeah,
that'd be super fun. Like you fight random fish people with like portal knight armor.
Yeah. And they like
because they've died down here such a long time ago.
Yeah, and so maybe like you have to roll like history checks to try to figure it out. But it's like,
oh my gosh.
Yes.
Okay. This ties in perfectly with the dead creature in these chasms. Mm-hmm. The portal knights died fighting it and killing it to prevent it from coming into the world.
Yes. For 100%. Yes. That's it. And maybe all of this was not underwater at the time, but something they had to do to kind of destroy it in the end ended up all of this water filling up this thing that is just that now it's this huge sea. Maybe it rose the water level of the whole planet like a whole bunch. So that's why this sea exists.
I like this idea. I think it'd be really cool to so when I look at like a picture of the Mediterranean Sea, you know how it like funnels really small before it goes out to the ocean? Yeah. What if at one point this was all just a huge valley and the knights ended up destroying the landmass that blocked the ocean and the ocean like poured in?
Yes, that is a great...
And that's why you have the sea.
That is a great way of... Yes.
And so now you have this, what looks like just this natural sea that connects to the ocean has this historical significance of literally man-made, essentially, because it was once this huge valley that they destroyed the access to, like, literally wipe trace of any of these portals being here so that nobody would ever find them.
Yeah, that's really good. I like that.
And now in these old caverns with the remnants of a battle, that you are people looking for gems stumble upon the remnants of this battle with some sort of ancient monstrosity and these portal knights. Yeah,
that's really cool. But before they got there, the Sahuagin, maybe they even had like teachings, like old, like, I don't know if they would be religious books, but at least books of their order that kind of like the Sahuagin have like read and kind of taken to heart some of it. And so maybe they even are like actually dedicated followers to this group now. And not just like,
you can do all sorts of, you could do all sorts of really cool stuff with this.
I just want to point out right now, I don't think we've done anything to really create the city yet. We're really diving into these.
We're almost there.
Into these caves, which are great.
We're almost there. It's we had to make something where the city would be.
Yeah, for a reason for the city to be there. In that position.
Well, what I was just about to say was that
I'm sure you were.
when you get like the city, it's well, yeah, it actually was. I was about to say this has nothing to do with the city. I was actually literally about to say that. But story of this podcast, hey, we're gonna make a city. Actually, let's not.
Make this cave full of crystals. Wait, how does that relate to our topic? I don't know. It worked though.
Come to listen to two people make a city. That's funny.
Yeah. Oh wait, you wanted us to make a city? Gotcha.
But what I was gonna say, is that what you would end up making for the city, at least in my mind, come here, Mrs. Burb, is that you would have like these holes in the boardwalk where you could have these really cool like guilds that have been set up.
Mm-hmm.
And what you could do is you could make like a group of like portal knights, like the New Order essentially, and they've formed up here to search for this kind of stuff under these like ancient lore, like ancient stories of heroes fighting in this great battle, and maybe they're kind of seen as crazy because everybody in the city's like, this has been a sea for thousands and thousands of years, but these like small group of, like zealot knights believe that this was once an ancient valley, that held
yeah, like their religious text has such battle. A like outlandish idea in it, this being a valley at one point, that everybody just writes them off as you're ridiculous.
Yeah, and then what you could do is with the city, you could make all sorts of cool little adventuring groups, like adventuring guilds that dive into these cities, and into the potholes essentially.
Yeah,
and you could have, you could like frame them all in certain ways and get your players to like have to decide which one they want to choose to like dive down into these, like who they want to lead them. They want these weird zealots. Do they want like pirates? Do they want all sorts of different stuff? It'd be really fun.
Yeah, that's cool. Who do they team up with to dive in?
Yeah,
kind of like we had to decide in Chris's campaign. Because we wanted to go and explore this place that he created called the Wastes, and we had to decide, like, there was groups that were going out. We did not have the money to fund an expedition, so we had to go on someone else's.
Yeah, very similar to that. Like very similar to that, because like you're essentially diving into the depths.
Yeah,
looking for treasures and ancient artifacts that have been left at the bottom of the sea in these tunnels.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And to me, that would form like a huge portion of the culture of the city. And what you could also do is you could have this kind of split in the city between the land dwelling people on the city and the people who live on the boardwalks. And you could have like the nobles and higher ups live up on the land, and they look down upon the people on the boardwalks.
Yeah, they fund the expeditions, but they look down on the people who do them.
And I even like calling it the boardwalks, because then it's kind of like, you're from the boardwalks, like
that's
you
cool.
have this like split in the city, between the upper echelon who lives up on these like hills, these like beautiful vineyards, you know what I'm saying? Like this very Mediterranean-esque landscape where they kind of overlook the boardwalks and see I wouldn't say the filth, but we
all know you would, Aaron. We all know your spontaneity. You definitely would call it the filth. Yeah, I'm more a man of the people, as we all know, so I wouldn't. But yes. You,
I just grabbed my water bottle.
I was going to say Mr. Ice over here.
Dang it.
Dude, I've heard you put it down and pick it up multiple times this episode.
Okay, I haven't touched it.
When it hits the episode, when it hits the table, it goes kadunk.
I must be like hitting my desk with my hand, okay? That's the first time.
So, leadership of the city. Is it a council? Is it a lord? Is he involved in this expeditions in any way? Or is he like above all of it, just worrying about the city instead of that type of stuff?
I see.
Is he like
I see it as two different options.
Uh-huh.
One, we have a rich lord who resides in his castle way up on top of the hill, who overlooks the beautiful, scenery that is the Mediterranean Sea, in quotation marks.
Yeah.
Like that guy. I see that. But I also see like a rich oligarchy, council of people who like run the vineyard, who, runs,
I like
expeditions.
I like that. The The vineyard. I like the name of that. So the vineyard would be the people to the nobles, people who live on land. The land is called the vineyard. So there's the vineyard and the
The vineyard
boardwalk.
versus the docks. Yeah, versus the boardwalk. Yeah,
Yeah, so the
I like that
vineyard,
a lot.
even though like maybe they even do grow like grapes and it's a full on vineyard. There are some full on vineyards up there. That's just the name of the whole place because they're more they want land to be like, because to them land is a sign of because you're built this place literally on the ocean. So having land is like a huge thing there. Owning it is, because none of it came free. None of it was, oh, I just placed my stake here. It was like, this thing was made specifically and sold.
Yeah, and I also like the idea, like naming it the vineyards. Like if as you walk up these hills, like you can just see it's like this extravagant gardens. You know, these like hanging gardens and all sorts of like beautiful, plant life that has essentially taken over the city.
Yeah,
created this like beautiful haven, versus the boardwalks, which is this floating.
I like to think that all of them are like they're still owned by the vineyard, the people who live in the vineyards, but they are like rentals. So people have to pay these rich nobles to live here.
Oh yeah, it would definitely be like, this is our city, our land.
Yeah, because like we paid to build this thing, it's ours.
Oh yeah. Oh totally. Yeah. So I think that would be a fun dynamic.
Yeah.
Besides the tunnels, is you have the land, the vineyards versus the boardwalks, where like the wealthy high up, nobles versus the people who are fishing and swimming into these treacherous tunnels to make living and ends meet.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's cool. I like that.
And then I'd even think you could see like you'd be able to see like you could make all sorts of cool different shops, like some in the boardwalks that are like rundown taverns, like lively fun atmosphere, versus like this like high end beautiful tavern that you could stay in, and obviously make the prices much different.
Yeah, they're reflective as like, their status.
Yeah, exactly. And so you could make this dynamic even between like the shops that you made.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
And then you can also have like a shop called Sunken Treasures or whatever, and on the boardwalks that has.
It's definitely just it is 100% has to be a gimmick shop. Like anybody who knows anything like is like, no, none of that stuff actually came from down there. Like we go down there every day. None of that. That's all just like visitor BS.
I mean, I also like it. I also like the fact that I do like the idea of having a nice shop that has treasures from the tunnels, because then it would
I do like that,
might provide incentive.
But I think the one on the boardwalk, I mean, I think the main stuff that you see out and about in that shop are not going to be real. But I think maybe they have like one or two, and so like if for some reason they see the party as a possible sell, like they show them this super expensive thing that was actually down there.
No, yeah, totally. No, I like that idea too.
Yeah,
totally. And I mean, you couldn't make a shop with all amazing magic items,
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, next question is, how did the city form then? So we have these cool tunnels. We have this like sea that how it formed. How was this city like established and created?
I would say that there was the discovery of the crystals happened by this the portal knights when they were searching, because they were like, it should be around here somewhere, but they were wrong. They found the wrong place, but they found all of these crystals, and they're like, that's incredible. Like, and so they tell some people, nobles hear of it, they are like, we got to get more of this, and so they start sending expeditions, and it continues and continues and continues until they're like, we got to just build something closer. Like, this is ridiculous that we keep doing this.
Almost like a gold rush.
Yes, it became a gold rush, but the first people to find it were the portal knights.
Yeah, like an ancient search. Okay, I even like this. So portal knights, which we don't have a name because classic Dungeoneer.
Classic.
The portal knights, they found these ancient caverns first as they were looking for the remnants of this battle.
Yes,
that's how was originally how it started. They also died going down to the tunnels looking for these looking for these ancient battles.
You want them to die? Okay.
Yeah, well, so there's a reason. There's a reason why I want them to die.
Sure there is.
I want them
you
to
just want
die
everybody
because
to die, Aaron.
True. I want them to die because I want this to not be a place that the Portal Knights like protect.
Well, no. So what I wanted it to be is that they were like, I wanted it to be like they found it, and so but they're always on the back foot. So they wanted it to be like their thing. Well, so I didn't think they went all the way through the tunnels as well. I thought it was like they found it, they told people, and then they kind of got trampled. So like everybody else built things before them, prepared, destroyed it.
Yeah, I was thinking something very similar, but what I was kind of picturing was this group of Portal Knights made their way, found these ancient tunnels. Because they're Portal Knights, they're like, hey, we have to get down there. We have to stop what's going on. We have to find whatever this is. And they went down and it was a disaster. And say like a couple of them made it out. And they fled to the nearest, huge city capital and were like, you're never going to believe what we found. This is real. And it turned up causing this huge gold rush where everybody's like, you found these tunnels and there was crystal, it would be like a description of like, we found this cool ancient battle site. There was crystal caves and stuff, but like they would explain this huge battle site. And then like people are like, wait, there's crystal caves.
Yeah.
And so then this flood of people came to investigate these crystal caverns.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially the lore of the Portal Knights got lost in it. And now only a few remain. And you possibly could even find, which would be really fun, like an elf or something who was a part of the Portal Knights who's like still alive, like this old who lives there now, like keeping watch over this area, like in the party could like talk to him and find him. Would be kind of fun.
So one of the things that I kind of wanted was that when the Portal Knights found it, I didn't want them to get all the way through it. I wanted it to be too dangerous. Something happened. Maybe it was the fire one that they found first, and they're like, but they saw the crystals out front, because I didn't want them to know. I want that to be a discovery that the players get, or maybe it was just like, yeah, I kind of wanted it to be the players to actually to get all the way through and find because like everybody else, they just pack up their containers full of crystals and head out, and so maybe the party gets it, and there's so few crystals that they have to keep going further and further until they reach like the last check mark or whatever mark on the wall. People say like, this is where I got, and they have to go past it, and that's where they find it.
So I guess I'm thinking very similar, because I'm thinking that
because I don't want the Portal Knights, because the Portal Knights would be very protective if they knew it was an ancient battles like historical site for them. I think they have to not know that yet.
Well, this is where I was thinking that the original group that found it had a horrible disaster trying to locate the exact location of the ancient ruins. So, like, they got attacked by Sahagin or whatever, and there was a huge disaster, and most of them died. And then the few that returned were labeled as, I mean, not insane, but like traitors, deserters, because they fled because they didn't want their reputation as knights to be tarnished after their loss. And so then once the flood of people came to harvest these crystal caverns, it all just got lost. So the players would still be, at least how I pictured it, is the players would still be making these initial discoveries because the history is completely lost, and the only thing that is left that resembles the original history is some old kook, like locked up in a dungeon or whatever, who's half lost his mind.
Interesting.
But it originally was discovered, and maybe not even the exact location, like I was saying, but they pinpointed the battle to this vicinity.
Yeah.
And then a lot of them died, and they ended up fleeing the battle, the expedition, to go and try and report. But they, for some reason, either weren't taken, like it was a joke, like it wasn't true, or they were labeled as like deserters or unhonorable because they didn't pursue or continue, and so therefore what they said was false, labeled as heretics or something for some reason. I'd have to figure out what the full reason would be, but I like the idea of them labeled as heretics or something too.
Interesting.
And then the flood of rich, hungry nobles and all of their peasant armies came and settled the land.
Yeah, and created the new city.
Crystals. Yeah, which then created the city.
Interesting.
And then, of course, as it got established, trade was then, brought to the city.
I think
harbors and docks.
I think it was brought super soon because, that's what they're there for with the.
Yeah, totally.
With the, I can't get words out. The crystals. The crystals is literally for sale.
Yeah. No. Yep. And then it just exploded into a flourishing city. And then you have like the vineyards because it's such good growing conditions, that you have wines and olives.
I think the whole point of it is that it was terrible conditions. And so it becomes a sign of money and wealth that you have the money to invest to create these beautiful gardens here. That's why it's called the vineyard, because no poor person could afford to have any sort of plants like this here. Like the salt water underneath them, because it has an outlet to the ocean, is deadly to any sort of plant or anything. And so you have to have a lot of money to put into it to get something as incredible as these people have. That's why it's a sign of wealth.
I like that idea, but I also like the idea of the rich nobles being able to like control all of this beautiful soil, being able to, they were the ones who like
brought it over.
They bought mercenaries and hired guards and hired patrols so that they could protect all of this vast, beautiful estates for growing wine. And that just compounded their wealth.
Yeah.
So like either of those, really. I do like the idea of it being like maybe so rocky that there is no topsoil.
Because they're making the thing in the middle of the ocean is what we made. So I assumed it was a floating platform, which is what you said, floating at the beginning.
No, but what I was saying is like the boardwalks, they started building just like a normal port city, but the boardwalks expanded from the port. Does that make sense?
Okay, so it's a city with a floating section. It's not a floating city.
Right. And that's why you have the land versus the water. Like,
okay, I was thinking it was like, okay, interesting.
Yeah, I was thinking it originally started as like a hill city that like had docks and stuff, and then as they explored and continued, they've just built the city onto the water to encompass all of the tunnels.
Okay, interesting. I was seeing it as in the water. Okay, yeah, that's where our parts got mixed up there.
Yeah, that would definitely be a gap.
That's why I was really confused with some of the things you're saying. I was like, what? Huh? Okay.
Yeah, but then so that's why you have a portion of it, is floating and is literally built on the water, and then it continues up onto the hill, onto the land.
Okay, interesting.
And so you have these beautiful vineyards, and these beautiful gardens that overlook the boardwalks.
Yeah. Interesting. That's cool.
And then it would also add to the growth and cultural aesthetic. Instead of it just being a city based on, crystal tunnels, you have all sorts of industry that has been able to sprout because of it, leading to an even greater explosion in population.
So I think any nation, when it's built in, any city, when it's even one's built around one thing, tunnels underneath it full of crystals. With just that one thing, it sparks many industries. I don't think you need industry like with that, you'll have industries of whatever protections are needed to go into those tunnels. Then you have industries to
certainly.
Yeah. So a lot of industries spring from one.
The thing is it helps the city establish roots a whole lot easier and have production such as like wine or foods, farms and things like that also are able to like function and create the city as.
Yeah, I don't know how Venice was made, but
giant piers and floating stuff. I don't know.
I know. So that's a floating city. I'm curious how that started. I'll have to look that up afterwards. But
it was originally a bunch of islands with like swamp.
Oh yes, it was like a marsh. Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah. And so they built it up because of that.
And they built it up on top of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
You remember that now?
Yeah. So I was thinking a harbor that the city essentially spilled into, like reverse dumping a cup of water out, but dumping a city onto water.
Yeah.
The city just grew into the water to essentially get all of these caves.
Yeah.
Under their banner, essentially.
Interesting. Was there a reason? Like, was there competition they were specifically trying to fight off, or was it just let's just make sure we never have competition?
Okay, I also like the idea. Before we even get into that, I also like the idea of this was originally like a small town for exporting grapes and olives, and then once the Portal Knights discovered this stuff here and this gold rush happened, the city exploded. I also like that idea too.
And so the vineyards was from a time from before.
Yeah, but they obviously, grew
they still
in wealth
do it. Yeah,
opulence. But yeah, like it was originally like, and then you could even add like a natives section if you wanted, like you could have indigenous people. That'd be kind of cool too, like an indigenous group that lived here before all of the crazy gold rush came. That'd be kind of fun too.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah, so you could do it that way too. I mean, again, this is like endless opportunities to do something with this, really.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of free and world creation.
Anyways, what was your question though?
Oh gosh, I don't remember it now.
Something about competition.
Oh yes. So was there? Because you were saying that they built these structures and whatnot on top of the caves. Like, it doesn't make sense for them to do that for no reason. That's just a whole bunch of building for stuff that they could just go to. Why did they do that specifically? Was there competition? Like maybe the city has a super weird shape because they had to encompass these caves, and so it kind of has like a weird L shape, or like it's a very long, thin city. Like, why is it doing that? Why would they spend their money in that way?
Yeah, so my original idea was that there were like so many. I picture it almost as like searching for the Fountain of Youth type thing. There were so many different groups of people in ships and stuff trying to get at these tunnels that the first original groups, the nobles who came and established the city, were like, we need to solidify our claim on this.
Yeah.
And not just have a bunch of boats, like solidify.
And that's when they formed a government together to kind of then propose,
and they built over it to say, you can't get here. This is ours.
Yeah. And so the vineyard is also the place of the like rulers of the city, because they were like, we got to stake our claim, and we also have to like make it technically illegal to go against us. So we got to be a governmental body at the same time.
Yeah, I picture it as like we need to, like you said, solidify our claim that this is our land, not just anybody to come and dive into the waters. This is ours. So they built like, I even like the idea of like walls that connect the outer parts of the lagoons and the, bay essentially that these tunnels are in to like safeguard it off, all sorts of stuff like that.
Yeah. Like underwater kind of netting to prevent people from coming in from outside type stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. All sorts of cool stuff.
You got to go in from their side or nowhere.
Yeah. You either come through our city and you
pay whatever taxes to dive, or
use our properties and lands, or you get out.
Yeah, that's good. It's good.
Which then would mean they need defenses. And that brings us to how are they defending their city? Because I mean, this is prime for pirate raids. This is prime for Viking raids. This is prime for full-on invasions. I mean, this is like...
I mean, it's the same as Waterdeep. It's prime for a lot of things. So, I think...
we got to do some sort of cool defenses. They made the cool giants.
So, I totally didn't talk about this for Waterdeep. Waterdeep has their head magic user is called the Blackstaff. Now, Blackstaffs are named that because of one of their ancient arcane magi's of the whole city. The head wizard had this black staff and kind of gained the nickname Blackstaff. And then kind of in honor of them, their apprentice kind of took on the staff and the nickname. And eventually it just got transferred to the position. And so there's actually a place called Blackstaff Tower where if you are the court wizard, you get Blackstaff Tower, you get the Blackstaff, and you get the position. And so they definitely have like multiple of these super powerful wizards. So it's not just like most cities where there's like one. It's like maybe each noble family has their own, and maybe they just call them magisters. Each one has their own magister, and that's like their high level wizard. And so those wizards are super powerful, so they can also fend off a lot. But then there's also I kind of want, I mean, this sounds terrible, but I kind of want more oppression to the boardwalk. And so I want to have kind of like a rough military group. Like the city watch is also like super terrible to the boardwalk.
No, I exactly see the city.
What is a good name for that type of a police force / city guards?
Oh, I don't know. There's so much.
I'm trying to think of something and nothing is coming to mind right now.
Yeah, well, okay. Let me address some of this. I think I'm enjoying this idea of families, like noble families, kind of ruling over the city with their own magistrate.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of each one of these families having their own like mercenary companies that they have hired to guard and patrol the city. And essentially the city is built off of money. Money, money, money.
Yeah.
And these families have all agreed that while they hate each other because they're all trying to vie for these caves and the boardwalks, they've all mutually agreed that when it's time, they have to combine their forces and their money to defend their lands. And so while there's this internal squabble, there's also this recognition of, if we have any kind of threats that are outside of our own squabbles, our military is united.
Maybe it's like a levy system where each person promises a certain amount of troops.
Well, my problem with, it would have to be, so my problem with a levy system is that's like traditionally over a huge nation. But I like the idea of like each noble family has to promise a certain amount of mercenary.
Yeah, so I wasn't even sure what exactly what a levy system is, but yeah, that's all I'm meaning is just each one has like maybe it's kind of like based on how much money you make or whatever. Like each one has a different kind of rate, how many they have to. Maybe it's based on like your last earning report, and so maybe the city, some of the issues in the city come when like some of the families are not fully reporting how much income they make so that they don't have to promise as much.
Oh yeah, you'd have all sorts of scumminess going on, you know? Oh yeah. But then what I also like about this is that the boardwalks is a united oppressed group. Okay, so the boardwalks is its own entity. It's owned by all the people in the vineyard, but they act as their own entity. Yes. You know what I'm saying? Like, they don't like the people in the vineyards, right? Mm-hmm. But they acknowledge they're owned by them. But when you get up into the vineyards, you have different districts of the vineyards, each named after individual families with their own individual like guards and cultural, setting and like all sorts of different.
Is it based on the ancient origin of those families, like where they were in the world, like where their like last name came from?
Yeah, you'd have them all sorts be different. Like you'd have them, and then you could even have like if you had ended up diving into this in a campaign, you'd even have the players be able to research these family names and where they came from and who they are.
Yeah.
So it'd be really fun to have this like united boardwalks that are all like the common people, and then these like mercenary overlords who just rule on money, who send their mercenaries down into the boardwalks to, you know, keep rule over them, you know?
Yeah.
And so you have this like extreme hatred of these different groups. And then you could even have little like squabbles between mercenary groups. So if you're up in the vineyards, you could have like, you know, one family's mercenary groups.
For sure. Yes.
Not like killing. I mean, they probably wouldn't go that far.
Like,
but
it's like know. Just outward, like, it's like Romeo and Juliet. How they wouldn't actually do anything originally. They just kind of met in the street and kind of like were like, hey, back off. This is our territory type stuff. Not full on.
Yeah, this is ours. What are you doing here? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like
and so you
did
can
you
have
bite
this
your thumb at me,
tension.
sir? Oh, I did not bite my thumb at you, sir. Like that whole.
Yeah. And you could have this whole tension just all throughout the entire city, where the boardwalks all hate the people in the vineyards, but then the people in the vineyards all hate each other. But they all know that they need to still work together, you know, to maintain a functioning society and defend what is rightfully quotation
yeah, I was
marks.
gonna say quotation marks there.
So that'd be a really fun dynamic of the whole city.
I love this city that we made, and it's really cool. And I like the whole, like, how we also made, like, a really cool story plot and, like, things to, like, stories to do in it.
Let's just say we took a dive off the deep end.
You have to throw in one bad thing every week, and that's it. You got yours. Boom. You did it.
I've been sitting on that for way too long.
Oh, well, it does not show.
Good. I'm proud of myself.
Okay. Well, this has been episode 14. And if you notice, there was a slight pause there because I was trying to figure out what episode this was because I didn't want to say it wrong again.
Hey, you're learning. You're growing. You know?
Aren't we all?
That's what it's all about. Progress.
Now, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. See you next time.
I was really going to be like, is this where I say bye? But now this is where I say bye. Bye?
Wow, that was weird.
Yeah, it was.